Let's watch a couple clips of left-wing progressive Kyle Kullinski sounding off on Piers Morgan in a rather invigorating debate about the current political landscape, the Democratic Party, and Trump. So, as always, we'll play the best clips and be back after with the needed context.
Who would you like to see run the party now? I mean, what's the future of the Democrats looking like to you?
Jon Stewart. I've been pushing that since the day Trump won this time around, because what we need is, honestly, a controversial, charismatic celebrity might make all of the difference, but it's that mixed with Bernie Sanders' policies of actually delivering social democracy for people, raising their pay, getting them health care. I think that's the magic stew. And honestly, I think it's a shame that more people aren't talking about the controversial, charismatic celebrity portion of Trump being so successful, is that you can't keep the cameras off him. He's entertaining. Love him or hate him, you can't stop watching him. And so we need to sort of mirror that on the left. And I think the way of doing that is Jon Stewart.
I completely agree with Kyle here. If there's anything that we can take from Trump or that can be learned from this now third lap around the presidential campaign trail for him, is the charisma that he brought into politics and how that helped him become almost untouchable on the campaign trail, from being this controversial, well-known figure who came in and also wasn't going to give you the cookie cutter teleprompter speeches. And that's something that we need as the vehicle for our messaging on the left, because it went against the kind of like establishment feel, the status quo feel, despite him effectively acting as president in a very establishment manner, a very status quo Republican manner. He can market himself as not that. And that's something we need on the left, mixed with what Trump lacks. And that's actual economic populist policy, actually fighting for the working class, like actually living up to the marketing you're trying to sell yourself on, while also reading as anything but status quo, which Kamala undoubtedly was very status quo, and then for some reason tried to lean into being status quo. I don't know, right? Whether it be cool, revolutionary, and to that extent, I do think Jon Stewart wouldn't make a bad pick. If the policy was right, he would be the perfect arbiter for it, for sure.
The way it's become a kind of new form of fascism, where the far left just basically want to cancel, shame, and humiliate absolutely anybody who disagrees with them about anything. Do you accept that has become a problem, a stick to beat the party with, which actually really damages them electorally?
No, I think Kamala ran basically the platonic ideal of a non-woke Democratic campaign. She never mentioned race. She never mentioned gender. She never mentioned trans people. She never mentioned pronouns or Latinx or cancel culture. She repeatedly stressed that she was going to represent all Americans. She ran to the right on the issue of the border. She talked about owning a gun. She ran on freedom and patriotism. And so when you put all that stuff together, I simply don't know what people are talking about when they say she's
they're talking about her record.
Those things at all.
Hang on. They're talking about her record as vice president of the Biden administration, where they never stopped talking about this stuff for nearly 4 years.
Yeah, none of this ever makes any sense, which raises a really good point that I'll get to at the end. But first off, it is kind of hilarious that Piers is here calling woke the new form of fascism, but refuses to say that Trump is a fascist. So to Piers, apparently the guy who wanted to weaponize the military against Americans and wants to go after media that disagrees with them isn't a fascist, but the 18-year-old kid who thinks that trans people should exist is a fascist. That's kind of weird to me. But to Kyle's point, Kamala very much so ran to the center. She ran to the right on border and immigration. She ran pro-law enforcement. She never mentioned LGBTQ issues or race issues when she ran. Taxing the rich wasn't a central theme. Yeah, she was like, we'll tax like unrealized gains and this kinds of things to fund tax cuts, but it wasn't like tax the rich, make them pay their fair share, like the woke kind of messaging of it. She never came to the defense of like trans athletes, even though that was like a big thing at one point of the campaign cycle. She supported private health care. And despite all of this, the right still tried to paint her as this communist, radical, leftist, San Francisco liberal, which just goes to the point that I want to make. The Democrats need to stop being scared to lean into this economic populism for fear that they'll be labeled radical, because the right is going to label them radical no matter what they run on. That is core to the right's platform at this point. So actually just do the populism, win over these large swaths of people who are begging for the government to do exactly that, and allow the Republican Party to self-defeat themselves, right? Allow them to insulate themselves as the party of the old straight white man who doesn't think that everyone deserves health care, while we are the party of the worker, the party of the people.
What I'm much more concerned about is not Democrats being woke or Democrats censoring speech. I'm much more concerned about Trump's record on those things. So, for example, Trump said he wants to punish flag burning with a year in jail. That's against the First Amendment. He sued CNN for $475 million for calling election denialism the big lie. Before he was president, he sued Bill Maher for $5 million over a joke. He said he wants to open up the libel laws. He called for jailing journalists who report on the Supreme Court abortion ruling early before the decision.
How many of those things did he do in his first term?
Pro-Palestine protesters.
How many of those things did he actually do in his first term?
Exactly. And every accusation is a confession from MAGA. I will continue to say this until the end of time because it is true. They will pretend that the left is doing something. And because of that, they are horrendously terrible people. And this is just some unthinkable act, only for Trump and Republicans to turn around and do it. So then they have to cheer it on or act like it never happened, from the whole, George Soros and Soros money in politics and Zuckerberg money in the election and all this kind of thing you heard for years, to now cheering on Elon bribing people to vote for Trump. Or you have the way that they'll say like the left wants to attack free speech, and then Trump's attacks on free speech, from burning the flag to the Democrats want to erode the Constitution and don't value the Constitution, to Trump then saying we should terminate the Constitution. And the right never cares, again, until it's something that they can say the left is doing and they feel like it's a good attack line. Then all of a sudden it becomes the worst thing ever. And it's I can't believe that this has ever happened. And why do we allow the radical left to ruin our country like this? And to Piers' question, yeah, he did try to do this in his first term. He removed whistleblower protections in his first term to go after EPA whistleblowers. He issued gag orders to journalists and social media companies. He had a journalist arrested outside his rally. He's now sued CNN. He's talked about taking away media licenses. I mean, this is someone who in no way has ever embodied the Constitution. And definitely not the First Amendment specifically. But Republicans still try to masquerade themselves as the party of freedom and liberty despite this fact.